Hi everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Just Good Games. After the great success that was my What is Rockstars Best Game video, I have decided to take on what I would consider an even harder task, and that is deciding what is the best 3D Mario game. Now, after consulting the internet in its eternal glory, it is pretty much universally agreed upon that there are 7 3D Mario games, and they are as follows: Super Mario 64 from the Nintendo 64, Super Mario Sunshine from the GameCube, Super Mario Galaxy and Super Mario Galaxy 2 from the Wii, Super Mario 3D Land from Nintendo 3DS, Super Mario 3D World from the Wii U, and obviously Super Mario Odyssey from the Nintendo Switch. Like with my Rockstar video, I will be scoring each game out of 10 in 5 separate categories and adding up a score at the end, so you'll end up with a score out of 50 for each game. The categories are gameplay, level design, innovation, soundtrack, and difficulty and challenge. That's one category. Concerning the difficulty / challenge category, it does not necessarily mean the harder the better. It means the game has a good difficulty curve. It's not too easy to finish, it's not too difficult, it offers the right amount of difficulty for newcomers and Mario veterans. So, before I get into all this, I would just like to say that all these games are top draw games, and if I was to review them separately, they would get 9s or 10s out of 10s. The bar of Mario 3D games is so high, and I don't want any aggro if I am scoring things at like 5 out of 10s or 6 out of 10s. We're comparing the games like against each other, so there is going to be lower scores for some of the games. That's just because the Mario 3D quality is just so high. And also, I would like you to now go down, hit that subscribe button, because it's a me, Mario. This game coming at the bottom of the pile is no surprise. It was a nice and very good DS game, but when comparing it to the other games, it was just never going to stack up. Obviously, playing a new proper 3D Mario game on the go was awesome, but it was obviously limited by the 3DS's hardware. But for a 3D DS game, absolutely fantastic. This game is sort of a hybrid of the 2D and 3D Mario formula, and that is pretty cool. But it also limits what it can do, and the gameplay is just a bit more basic, like a 2D Mario game. And there's nothing wrong with 2D Mario games, but this list is 3D Mario games, and it just lacks that special something to make it stand out. There's a lot of different power-ups, and that's pretty sweet, but again, it just doesn't reach the heights of the other games. The level designs in this game are also good, and make no mistake, this is still a fantastic game. As I keep saying, the levels offer a very high level of platforming, and there's a lot of levels. The special levels offer a great level of challenge, the levels themselves are very old school in nature, and they're just a lot of fun, but they can be very basic, and there's almost like a been here done that sort of vibe to some of the stages. There is not much innovation to this game, but where it scores some points is how it used the 3D function on the Nintendo 3DS to sort of show it off. It was good but not great. I'm not a fan of 3D sort of things, the proper 3D coming at you sort of stuff. But in this it did look good, and the fact that it changed it up and brought back some of the old school cool power-ups from the 2D era is also awesome. This soundtrack, being a bit old school in nature, leans obviously on the classic Mario tracks, and I can dig that, but once again it does the old stuff well but doesn't change it up enough to warrant a higher mark. This game can be a bit frustrating at times, and although it starts off at the same level as most of the other games, the curve jumps all over the place really. Some levels, as I say, can be a bit frustrating, a bit annoying. It's still very enjoyable, but it is the lesser of the 7 games, and I think there can be no complaints at this being at the bottom. The quality of the other games are just so fantastic. This is not a bad game, but it is the game which is bottom of the pile. Again, this game coming in at this position does not surprise me at all. This is a very good game, and as an experience it's definitely better than 3D Land. It's very similar to 3D Land though, but due to it being on a more powerful system, the scope and just the quality is just a cut above. And although it's still the same concept, that's the reason it doesn't climb higher. The gameplay is very similar to 3D Land, in fact it pretty much is a 2D Mario game done in a 3D style, but what sets it above is the fact that you can play as 4 different characters, 5 if you unlock a special one, offering different abilities. The catsuit is also an amazing addition to the power-ups canon. It's a very solid Mario game gameplay wise. It does what it needs to do and offers up some really nice concepts, as you will see from the trailer. The level designs again are definitely better than 3D Land and the scope is far greater. These again are 2D levels done in a 3D style. The final boss in this game is absolutely amazing and really shows off what this game is capable of, but it doesn't hit that level in this game as much as it should, and that's why this game is not at a higher level of Mario games. This game is very fun though, and the level designs are geared more towards playing with friends, which is always fun. There's about as much innovation here as Super Mario 3D Land, but the extra points being gained is for the different abilities for different characters. Although that has been used in 2D games before, the way it uses the Wii U controller and the fact that it actually came up with a new fan favourite power up in the catsuit. The soundtrack is really just a standard Mario soundtrack. It does what it needs to do and that is very good. Nice sprinklings of nostalgia with enough new stuff to modernise it. Also, what I love about this soundtrack is it does draw from all sorts of different areas of the Mario universe. There's a big variety here and that is just great. This game has a nice difficulty curve to it and does have a real nice mix of easy and hard levels. The final boss is a challenge. A lot of the bosses are a challenge but still adhere to that 3-hit rules, and there's lots and lots of special stages to keep you going and to keep more seasoned Mario heads occupied. I really do like this game and this is really a top draw Mario game, but it just lacks that magic and innovation that the games above it have. If you have a Switch and you want to play a Mario game in your isolation, get out and buy this. It's been re-released and it will be well worth your time. I know there might be a bit of hate for Sunshine being this slow. I do love this game, but there are a few things which hold this game back. I think Flood is a good addition to the Mario canon, but I think it hinders the platforming a bit, and with only 8 stages, which is the lowest out of all these games here, it's just not enough. This is still a very underrated game, and if you grew up with a GameCube like I did, then you will have very fond memories of this game. As I said, the addition of Flood in this game was a good addition, but somehow holds it back from the 3D platforming greatness of the other games. I get that they wanted to change it up from the 64, and the water and ink based combat is very fun and almost can be seen as an early inspiration for Splatoon. I like that there are 3 different attachments for Flood, but it's obvious to see why they changed it back to the more traditional gameplay for the later entries. Also, you can ride Yoshi in this game, or Yoshi depending on how you pronounce it, which is always good and always adds a couple of points for me, as it's just awesome when you get to ride Yoshi. Although there is only 8 stages in this game, and I said that was a bit of a hindrance earlier, they are really well designed, and actually when I look back on this game there's some really top draw Mario levels. Bianco Hills, Piano Park and Serena Beach are absolutely fantastic and just so fun. The ways you had to collect the shines in those levels are very clever. The other levels vary from good to okay, but there's nothing in here which is bad. The boss battles are also very fun and probably some of the best bosses in all of Mario's 3D games. Coming after Mario 64, the innovation was always going to be a step down really. Again, this really comes down to how you feel about FLUDD. He was fun, but it's not really a big innovation. There's some under the radar innovations here though, like the levels being much bigger and the water based combat. I quite enjoyed FLUDD and the way he was implemented, so that's why the score is as it is. The soundtrack is good, and obviously because Mario is on holiday on a tropical island, it leans into this quite a bit with tropical themed music, but there's no real standout classic tunes here besides the Delfino Plaza music. After listening to the soundtrack again, it's just an average soundtrack to be honest. This has a very similar difficulty curve to Mario 64 and is still quite old school, but maybe starts just a tiny bit easier. There's some challenging shines to acquire here and some difficult puzzles, but it's a nice level of challenge. An underrated classic, but one of the weaker 3D Mario games, and that's not to say it's bad, it's just the quality of the games above it are just so high. I honestly think this is about the right position for Super Mario 64. It was a trailblazer, the game that set the template for all 3D Mario games to come, and is an absolute classic. Its place in gaming history cannot be disputed. As you will see by its score, it is a very good game, but the games above it have taken what made this game so great and redefined and improved upon it, and that is why 4th is about right for Super Mario 64. The gameplay has started to show its age just a little bit, and when you compare it to the others, it's easy to see that, but at the time it was absolutely amazing. It set the template for every 3D Mario game since, and with the way you just collect the stars from various worlds, and it introduced the free Mario coloured caps. The only thing which let it down really is the camera, as it can be a bit frustrating, and the swimming is not the greatest, and when you have a lot of water levels, and there's actually quite a few water levels in this game, that's just not that good. There's 15 main stages in Mario 64, each really ticking off like a checklist of video game level cliches. There's a lava level, a desert level, a water level, an ice level, and they're all crafted nicely, but some of the levels again do show that age. Wet dry world is a bit frustrating, raising and lowering water levels is just a bit annoying to me. There's some generic stages like Snowman's Land and just too many water levels, as I said earlier, but there's classic stages like Tall Tall Mountain, the Bombfit Battlefield, Big Boo's Haunt, Cool Mountain, and Womp's Fortress. TikTok Clock is very clever, and all these levels just work really well, and finding the stars in most of them are an absolute joy. This game was most definitely the biggest leap in the Mario franchise ever. The swap from 2D to 3D was absolutely massive, and they just nailed it. Just look what happened to Sonic during the 3D era transition, and you realise how much of a big achievement and innovation this game is. Some probably thought it could not be done, but Nintendo did it and redefined the way we play. Throw in the 3 new caps allow Mario to fly, turn to metal and be invisible, and this game is just full of ideas. As I said, this game set the template for the future of Mario, and this cannot be understated. The soundtrack, like the rest of this game, is absolutely classic and once again set the template for future Mario games. It took some classics from the 2D era and reinvented them, and that is great, but some levels tracks can just get a bit annoying on a loop, and some are just a bit uninspired, but overall it's fantastic. Mario 64 is probably the hardest game of all the 3D Mario games. It's very old school in its nature, and it lets you get on with it really. Some of the stars are quite challenging and secrets are difficult to find. I think its difficulty curve is about right, as the stages become a bit more challenging towards the end. As I said earlier, this position just feels right for this Nintendo 64 classic. This was easily the hardest game out of all of them to score, as it is the only direct sequel in the Mario 3D canon. So some of the categories were really hard to score due to this pretty much being Mario Galaxy but with a load of new stages. But that is not necessarily a bad thing, as you will see. On gameplay terms, there's not really any major differences between this and the first game, really. It just seems a bit tighter, and the addition of Yoshi adds a bit more variety to the gameplay. As I said, Yoshi always equals more points. The way you bounce around various stages and different planets is amazing, and the platforming is just top notch. It's easy to see why Nintendo gave just the Galaxy thing just another go and did another Galaxy game. This is where Galaxy 2 is just a cut above the first game. Galaxy 2 takes everything that worked in the first game and improves upon it in very creative ways. There's a secret world, there's always a secret world in the Mario games, but these levels are hard as hell and push you to the limit. The bosses are also just a cut above the first game. The gameplay is just creative, and it uses the gravity mechanics again in such awesome ways, and again, Yoshi equals more points. This was the hardest category to score in probably the entire video, as I can't really penalise this game for being a sequel and thus not bringing it down too much, but it did bring a bit more to the table to warrant the points. It does improve upon the predecessor in some ways, but not in the innovation stakes. Its level design is better, and that does count for something, and I will beat this dead horse again, but Yoshi usually equals points. The soundtrack is pretty much like the same as the first game. It's not like the same songs, but it builds upon the songs of the first game with the space themes, epic space opera, but I think the soundtrack's just a bit better than the first game, so that's why it's got an extra point here. And it does bring in hints of the classic songs as well, but it's still not as strong as some of the stronger soundtracks. This game, like many Mario games, is not too difficult on the surface, but it's not too hard to complete, like to rush through it and then get to the end. I think what they started to do was made the games easier for kids to play, to just get to the end, and then added in harder stages afterwards, or made it harder to complete it 100% for the more seasoned gamers. If you want to do everything in this game, there is 120 power stars, and you get 120 green star levels after completing the 120 power stars. This is just fantastic. This requires you to obviously get 242 unique power stars. That's amazing. It has a lot to offer everyone, has a similar curve to most Mario games, and what this game lacks in pure innovation and originality, it makes up for in great level designs, but it did not beat its predecessor. The fact that the top three are separated by just a couple points says all you need to know about how close this was, and this is the slightly superior original Mario Galaxy. This game is held in such high regard, and it's really easy to see why. This is one of my absolute favourites. The gameplay is absolutely fantastic in this game, and the way it made use of the Wiimote is very clever. Mario can now ping his way between tiny planets and moons. It's fantastic. Mario's new spin move is a great addition, and it's just the way it plays with perspective is just so cool. The star pointer was another new gameplay mechanic which allowed you or a second player to shoot star bits at enemies and use it to like pull the stars back to shoot you around the planets. The gravity mechanics are also really cool and inventive. I know it wasn't probably the first to do it, but it's not been done better really, has it? This is really where this game shines. There's 42 levels / galaxies, and I know more doesn't necessarily mean better, but it's most definitely the case with this game. Each level is just a new idea or a new combination of the ideas that came from the levels before. It's just so clever, and although the levels are not as big, they still make up for it by being truly memorable. This game is probably the second biggest leap in a 3D Mario game. The way it somehow does the 2D Mario style of stages in a new, truly 3D style, but still allowing the freedom of some of the games which are more open world is awesome. I know I criticised like the 2D 3D thing in 3D Land and World, but Galaxy just does it in a way which does encourage more exploration, and it feels more in line with 64 and Sunshine and Odyssey in the way that the stages have multiple stars, or shines, or moons, or whatever you want to call them in these games. The way that it used the Wiimote is also second to none. The ideas are just pouring out of this game. It's just so clever, and there's a reason why this game is considered one of the best of all time. This really took Mario to the next level and made sure that everybody knew who like the king of video games were, the gaming icon that is Mario. The soundtrack is probably the weakest part of this game, and although it's a cool space-style epic soundtrack, it just lacks the classic style of 64 or the memorable tracks of Odyssey. There's not really much more I can say here. It's just like epic space opera, and if you're into that, you're into that, and I am a bit, but it's just not as good as some of the other games there. Although this game starts off quite easy, it has a great difficulty curve and ramps up difficulty at a very nice pace. The later stages are challenging, and it is a massive challenge to get all the stars. This game was just amazing, and it really redefined what a Mario game can be, and it's just one of the best games ever made. But there's a Mario game which just edges ahead, and it's probably my favourite Mario game of all time. And here it is, the number one 3D Mario game, Super Mario Odyssey. There might be a tiny bit of recency bias to this, but I truly do believe that Mario's latest offering is his best game. It takes everything that has come before and just improves upon it, and it's just like the ultimate Mario game. As I said, this game is pretty much the ultimate Mario game and takes everything that has come before and improves upon it. This truly is 3D platforming at its finest. Cappy is probably one of the best new additions to a Mario game ever, and just opens up so many new gameplay options by being able to take over almost any creature in the game, and the way he is used to create an extra platform to jump is amazing. Just look at some of the YouTube videos people have done of platforming around these levels. It's absolutely fantastic. Playing as Mario as a T-Rex is just an absolute joy, and the creature that you take over at the end, no spoilers here, is just the best. The open world style of the levels is absolutely fantastic. They are vast and definitely the biggest in any Mario game. There's also a more realistic approach to some of them, like New Donk City, which is one of my absolute favourite Mario levels ever. The festival celebration brought a tear to my eye. The clever ways in which you have to find almost like 30 to 40 moons in each level is absolutely amazing, and the designs of the levels on the darker and darker sides of the moon are challenging and just a joy, an absolutely fantastic joy to play. Although not as innovative as 64 or Galaxy, the switch to the more open world style is definitely a big plus. Cappy and the way that he is implemented is definitely an innovation. I would say that I wouldn't be surprised if they brought him back, but Nintendo tend to never do the same thing twice. I might be a bit biased here, but this is my favourite soundtrack of any Mario game. Jump/Do the Odyssey is just a great theme song for the entire game, and one of the most catchy and best gaming songs of all time in my opinion. This game manages to mix old and new together very, very well, and somehow makes its own style. This is probably this game's only down point, and it is the difficulty. It is just way too easy to complete, and I get that they wanted the kids to get through it, but it loses a point for that. But to get all the moons, which I did, it takes a lot of skill, and that's where the challenge comes in. I know you're probably going to completely disagree with me here, and that's fine, but this is the best 3D Mario game for me anyway, and Odyssey, the bar has just been raised, and I can't wait to see what Mario's next adventure, where his next adventure takes him. There's also now a rumour going round that Nintendo might be remastering some of these classics soon, so we might get to play some of them again soon, and you might alter your opinion a bit, going back and playing them. Thank you for making it to the end of this video. This video has taken me a long time to make, and if you've made it to the end, thank you so much. All I need you to do now is hit that subscribe button, hit like, share this, follow us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram. Just look out for more videos coming over these next couple weeks and months. And once again, you have been watching Just Good Games.